he would only hire a health director who shared his Christian values. I mean, it's of what, killing people who have a lot of evidence demonstrating they might be innocent of a crime that they did not commit. Like, what Christian value?
Even the victim's family of the woman who was murdered said publicly they did not want him to be executed, and they were also wanting it to go back.
Yes. All right. We're here. Happy Friday, everyone. Hello, Andrew and April. Good to see both of you.
Good to see you.
Okay, there was kind of a delay there, so I was a little worried. Like, uh-oh, I'm going to get in trouble. Okay, we have a lot to get to, so I'm going to fire the stinger right away, and then we'll hop into it. Let's get into it. Yes, it is Friday. Every Friday, April and I hop on the podcast to recap what has happened in the week. And at the end of every month, we're joined by our friend, Dr. Andrew Whitehead, who's a sociologist and I would say an aficionado of Christian nationalism. And we bring you on to kind of help us break down the data of what we're seeing happen in current events and how it correlates to Christian nationalism. So it's great to be joined by both of you. Welcome in. I'm going to kick us off, if you don't mind, because I have something it's kind of a repentance, but not really. So I just got back from Austin, Texas. We had our live in-person event with Representative James Tallarico. It went really well. It was very cool.
Awesome.
We had about, I don't know, 100 people show up to the event at Austin Seminary. It was great. We brought a camera crew out. We're gonna have it on YouTube. This will drop on YouTube next month. I gotta say, guys, Austin, Texas. That was my first time ever in Austin. Well, really in Texas, like for a long time. And Austin is wacky. I want to show you something that I found. This is a real thing that they have in Austin. Watch this.
Oh yeah.
Nice. Oh, you got to get your fried chicken.
They have a Chick-fil-A robot that will deliver your food via robot.
Is it just Chick-fil-A, or do they have other food places too?
Look at that screenshot. Look at that thing. Just look at that thing. Now, if you're listening on podcasts, I'll try and describe this to you. It is a little cart, but it's not tiny, but it's not like a car. It's in between. And it's a fully automated. It delivers you Chick-fil-A from Chick-fil-A. It's made by Chick-fil-A. This isn't like Grubhub or something. And it's a robot, and it navigates down the street to give you the Chick-fil-A that you ordered. My mind was blown.
Wow. That's cool.
What times we're living in. So is this a sign of the end times? Like what verse? Like
that's the mark of the beast.
Yeah,
anything I don't know is the mark of the beast.
But isn't this God's chicken? See, this gets us in a lot of in some murky territory, because Chick-fil-A is God's chicken. Obviously, they're closed on Sundays, therefore they're Christian. But now we have this like new technology, AI robot stuff that it's automated. You just hit order, and a robot delivers your food. So I don't know what you do with this.
I think you just live and let live.
It's true.
I don't think you got to do anything.
If you like it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's fair. The other thing I wanted to kind of confess, and it is a confession, I'm not going to lie, is that we had to rent a vehicle, okay? We had to rent a vehicle. Now, I want to explain what happened, because before you
got to hit the music, right?
Fine.
There we go. All right. Carry on.
I thank you. Yeah. I want to explain, before you see the vehicle that we rented, I want to give the context, because context is important here. So we had to bring out a film crew, so 2 people with lighting. So we needed to rent an SUV type of vehicle. Okay. So now we're a nonprofit.
The slippery slope.
I know, but we're a nonprofit, and we really try and make sure that whenever we travel, that we have a budget, and we try and stay on budget. We don't want to go over budget, etc. So I'm on the good old Turo app. Turo is like the Airbnb of vehicles. You can rent people's private vehicles. And I'm in Austin, Texas, looking. I'm scrolling through, and I'm looking for SUVs. So there's like a Ford Bronco for like $60 a day. There's a Chevy Traverse for $70 a day. And then there's a Tesla Model X PD100. That's like the fastest Model X you can get. It's like a $100,000 vehicle for $70 a day. With taxes and fees, it was $320 to rent for 3 days. And I said, I will absolutely do that. So I did. So I rented this $100,000 SUV because I gotta be honest, before Elon went crazy, I always loved Teslas. I'm a tech guy. I used to work for Apple. Teslas they're just cool. Like, forget Elon for a second. They're just cool vehicles. So I had the opportunity to rent my dream SUV for 3 days, and I did. So
wow.
I kind of repent, but I kind of don't, because here's the thing. This was a private rental, meaning no money went to Elon. None. And I'm not rich. So I know Jesus warns rich people that they can't enter the kingdom. But I just pretended I was rich for a few days. See, I rented someone else's vehicle. So I think I'm safe. I think I can still get in the kingdom, and I did not support Elon Musk. And here's the vehicle. Here's what it looks like with the X-Wing doors open.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Is this considered an SUV?
Yes.
Huh.
Wow.
So I'm literally, we drive up to the seminary. I have to let my guys out, and this Tesla X-Wing door just completely, all the way up. And I'm like, this looks so bad, but it was cheaper than other SUVs on the app. So like we didn't pay extra for it. We just got a very cool car for 3 days.
Nice.
Probably because, I can't imagine you can fit as much stuff in there as like a big ol' escapade like SUV.
No, you really can, because they have a frunk. There's no engine in the front. So you have the front compartment where the hood is, it's just storage. And then the back seats fold down like any typical SUV. We fit a whole lighting rig and 3 people in that car, like no problem. It was totally fine. And I got to say, this car was very zippy. It has the Ludicrous Plus mode on it. And I will just say it is extremely zippy. It's kind of like when you're on a roller coaster and it launches you. It's that kind of feeling. And it also has self-driving capabilities, which we tried. I tried it once. I have a video of this. Again, if you're listening on podcasts, you can go to YouTube to see the video. This thing has full automated self-driving. You just hit a button and it takes over. I did not like it. I didn't know I was being filmed. This is an honest reaction. Here we go.
Okay. Oh, wow. So it's waiting for you.
You're doing it on a turn.
Into traffic.
Yeah.
Merging onto a highway. Wow.
Oh, gosh. No.
Jesus, take the wheel.
I couldn't let it. The control person in me. I don't think
I took over.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I guess that is what it feels like when Jesus takes the wheel, like Andrew said. Just take it, Lord.
Here we go.
It was freaky to let it go and have it turn its blinker on by itself, and the wheel just starts moving into like the left lane. You're like, what is happening? So
yeah.
Anyway, I did it, and I really overall I enjoyed it. The charging is still a problem. Like, I had to find a charger. It's not great in city. Like, it was okay, but the actual vehicle itself, it was a hoot to drive. And like I said, we got it for a great deal. So I repent, but I kind of don't. But also, it was very affordable, so no one screenshot that and be like, look, they're misusing donor money. Nope. It was below average. We just lucked out. So
now you got to be like, the new Evangelicals does not endorse Tesla nor Elon Musk.
Yes, this is not
a paid for this last.
This is not being paid by Elon Musk. So anyway, the trip went great. We had a great time. It will be out on YouTube probably next week. We talked for about 45 minutes with everyone. Then we did a Q&A. It was great. I love doing anything in person because I like talking to people not in front of a camera. I'd rather be in person. And it was just a really good time. So, and James is awesome. James is awesome. So
you got to get to Indianapolis sometime.
I'm down, dude. Right? Let's make it happen. I mean, I don't know.
We're all close, right?
You're like 3 hours from me, Andrew.
Yeah,
Indianapolis, because I'm in Lexington.
We could do this. Yeah, this is. Well, I could get to Louisville.
April,
Come on.
are you thinking what I'm thinking?
November?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell Andrew?
Are we making this public?
Yes. It might not happen, but it's at least a thought.
All right. Tentatively, the weekend after the election, Tim and his family are going to come visit us in Lexington.
Oh.
Do you want to come down?
Maybe we can meet somewhere halfway or something.
Yeah,
I don't
totally.
know. Could be great to try and connect. I mean, that'd be awesome. But yeah, April's like, we have extra bedrooms and we have children too. Bring your family. And I was like, you know what? Why not? Like, why not just pack them up and drive down? Like, we can.
Yeah.
We work together. It's all for work. So let's do it. So we're going to hop on down after the election and chill out for a few days. So if we can, could you imagine like an in-person conversation with the three of us on podcast? That'd be fun. That'd be fun.
Cool. I'll have to figure out how to set this up.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is like people don't realize that this is actually easier to do than to do it in person because we each have our own camera, we all have our own camera shot, we all have our own mics. Like it's actually simpler to do it digitally. But if we can do it, it'd be fun.
Beecher has access to studios at UK, so maybe we can.
I like how this. Look at God.
I know. Hold on. I take it back. I got to talk to Beecher first.
No. I text Beecher right now. Tell them we're coming. We're coming.
Yeah. Hilarious.
Anyway, no. So that would be really great. I mean, again, friends, this is happening live. We're unpacking this idea on camera. So we don't know if we can actually do it, but if we can, we will.
Don't hold us to it.
Yeah, riveting. All right. Well, we probably should start heading into some of the main stuff. There's a lot to get to today. I guess we'll just go with the lead story. It's
real quick.
It's hard. Yeah.
Pre-lead story. April's book comes out when this airs in like 3 to 4 days. So Tuesday,
October 1st.
Tuesday, October 1st, folks. Star Spangled Jesus.
Yes, here
is going to be available.
Thank you.
Pre-order now for the best deal.
I can't get it into this.
Order Tuesday and boost the algorithm. Super excited. That's going to be awesome. So congrats.
Thank you, Andrew. Oh, no, I'm super excited about it.
Yes, absolutely. Pre-orders really help books, so please go pre-order it.
And then
April,
review it.
Yes, review it. And then April, our conversation about your book is coming out, I think Monday we're going to try and drop it. So
awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, right before your book comes out. So
got to do that.
All
right. No, thank you, Andrew, for reminding me.
Yes,
I appreciate that.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I was just going to say earlier, it's hard to shift tone from like, we're having a good time talking about some more light stuff to a really serious and horrible and tragic topic of what happened in the news this week with Marcellus Williams. So we do have to talk about this for sure. Really, April, I know you kind of been doing some digging on it, so I'll kind of hand it over to you. But there's a lot going on.
Yeah, so Marcellus Williams was charged and convicted of murdering Felicia Gale in 1998. She was a former reporter, and she was found stabbed to death in her home. But since then, the Innocence Project has got involved, and they found that basically there was no DNA on scene to connect the murder to Marcellus. Basically the only evidence that they had was the testimony of 2 witnesses that were notoriously unreliable, and there was, I believe, like a reward out for someone that could connect Marcellus to the murder. But basically he had been sentenced to death a couple other times and was able to appeal enough to go to like delay it. But this past time there was new evidence that had come out, including fingerprints that they found on the murder weapon that were not, it was an unknown person, but was not Marcellus. And they also found that the police had tampered with it, because I think they found like some evidence, some DNA from the police on the murder weapon. And they had discovered that there was some racial prejudice on the jury selection, that they had intentionally not chosen someone because he or she was Black. And so, which you're not supposed to do. So there were a lot of reasons to throw this out, at least to give some doubt to whether or not he did this. So the Innocence Project, they started, with petitions, and I heard a lot of noise around this. I think it went all the way up to the Supreme Court too. And the 3 Democrat or the 3 Democrat appointed justices were the only 3 that agreed with the appeal. Everyone else was like, nah, he just go through with it. But yeah, so that's basically what happened. He was executed this week, regardless of all of these doubts. The governor, a lot of people are calling on the governor to delay it. He refused to intervene. But interestingly enough, this governor did pardon. I don't know if you have that screenshot. Yeah. So a few years ago, he pardoned that St. Louis couple who aimed guns at protesters during Black Lives Matter. A white couple. And so basically that's the setup of where we are. And so there's a lot of outrage right now that basically this was a government sanctioned lynching of a Black man, which and then the whole debate about the death penalty has also come up. And if you go to the Innocence Project, there's a bunch of reasons why executing him was not the way to go. Like the evidence didn't trace to him, even the victim's family. So there is none of the forensic evidence matched Mr. Williams. And I
can go through these that you sent me. I don't know if you want me to put them up or not.
Sure, if you want. I mean, I kind of summarized, but basically it was 2 unreliable witnesses that that basically was the entire prosecution's case, and how they got the conviction was based on these 2 witnesses that they were known fabricators, and there's no evidence to basically, like, there was no evidence, physical evidence to prove their
where's that
their
one?
testimony.
I'm trying to find the one that where's the one? These are all so good. And what we can do is we can put a link in the show notes again, so you can read all this for yourself. There is a lot here. I'm just trying to see. Is it this one? Yeah, this is the one that I must have missed it. But this to me is so key. I mean, no forensic evidence at all. No DNA, fingerprints didn't match. Like and according to this, the perpetrator who actually committed the crime left behind fingerprints, footprints, hair, and trace DNA on the murder weapon. And none of it matched Marcellus. Like, none of it. I don't understand how anyone in good conscience says, please proceed with the murder of this person, even though we have it's not beyond a reasonable doubt. I mean, that's clear as day to me. It's wow.
Right. And it makes sense if you're in 1998, or the early 2000s. Technology wasn't where it was today to have a wrongful conviction. But to deny appeals after new evidence has come forward and just kill someone who there's a good chance might be innocent.
Right.
Like, I don't understand that logic at all. But that's why we have our Christian nationalism expert here. And it's also been sad, too, for me, or just maybe it's just a reminder. Like, I've seen a lot of conservative Christians and people that I used to run in circles with celebrating this. We've seen tweets or like, in order to be pro-life, you have to be pro-death penalty. And to me, those don't go together at all.
No, they definitely do not. Also, in case, here's the thing. If you assumed, is this governor of Missouri a Christian governor? You would assume correctly. Like it is sad that it's sad that we could assume, just by the actions of this governor, that there's a good chance that they're a Republican conservative Christian, and it turns out that they are. I mean, the governor said, I have it over here too, when he was looking for a health director, he would only hire a health director who shared his Christian values. I mean, it's of what, killing people who have a lot of evidence demonstrating they might be innocent of a crime that they did not commit? Like, what Christian value?
Even the victim's family of the woman who was murdered said publicly they did not want him to be executed, and they were also wanting it to go back.
Yes. There was one other thing in these slides. Is it here? Where it was? It was, well, I'll just summarize it because there's so much text on these screens. But there's part of the story is that there was a committee that was put together to do a deeper dive into the case that the governor abruptly dissolved, and then his attorney general, once that was dissolved, put him back on death row. That attorney general, also a Christian. I don't understand. I do not understand how these people think that these are Christian values. It is my neck breaks trying to turn around to understand what they're thinking, you know? So, I mean, yeah, Andrew, it would be great for you to share some of your thoughts on just the death penalty in general, what, if any, correlation there is to Christian nationalism in your read on this story.
Yeah, definitely. No, this is heavy stuff, but really important to face. So I'm glad that we're all doing that. Yeah, I think, you know, when we're looking at Christian nationalism and we're trying to understand how folks would say, I'm Christian, I'm pro-life, and then be pro-death penalty, it does seem like a mismatch. It doesn't quite add up. But I think, again, this is where the research around Christian nationalism and understanding what it is really kind of sheds light and is kind of the key that unlocks why these things go together and form this bundle where folks will say, I am pro-life, and that has, you know, political implications, but one of those is to be pro-death penalty, right? So with Christian nationalism, and we talk about this kind of once a month, you know, the elements, the cultural elements of Christian nationalism, it includes those historic Christian beliefs, as we've said, but then it also includes authoritarianism and a comfort with authoritarian social control. And a part of that is supporting a state-sanctioned violence, right? And state-sanctioned authority to enact order and hierarchy on the nation. And so we see over and over folks that are in positions of power or Christian leaders or politicians, when it comes down to perpetuating the status quo of this is the way the state functions, they're going to say, you know, this is, you know, basically that God moves through these rules and through these rulers, and this is the way that it should go. And so that leads to being okay with torturing political combatants on the field of war, or capital punishment, or, you know, if there's a police killing, well, you know, they have authority for a reason. And so it's the fault of the person who's killed. And by and large, when we look at the data, racial minorities, right, are more likely to be executed using the death penalty than white people, or to face violence from police than from white Americans. And so when we look at this system, the way it's been constructed in our history is constructed around these racial lines that were basically created to ensure that white Americans had greater access to privilege and power in the U.S. And religion was used as a way to make sense of that, to provide a logic for why we, quote unquote, were on top. And so the death penalty is one part of that. And so that's kind of where, you know, we can draw that line, that cultural part of Christian nationalism. The Christian of Christian nationalism contains all this extra stuff. And part of it is authority and authority structures. And that is why you would have a governor and attorney general when everyone else is saying, don't execute this person, saying, well, we need to continue on because this was found at one point in time, the system, you know, said that he should die. So we have to protect this system, right? Because the system, by and large, who does it benefit? Those in power, right? Those folks that are sitting in those seats of power. And so that's why I think for all of us on this call, generally pretty privileged folk, we have to listen to the voices of the marginalized, because those are the folks where the system is crushing them. There's no way that same outcome would happen to me, likely because I'm a white man, right? Like it just wouldn't happen.
Yeah. Is it also fair to say that that Christian nationalists favor the authority structures as long as they're the ones in authority, right? Because if political opponents or people who are not like them are in authority or are in power, then it's a problem, and that has to be overturned so they're back on top. Is that a fair assessment?
I think in a lot of ways it is. But even then, you know, the system in a way, even when, you know, there are other folks in power, they'll want to get back in power, but they'll kind of create and a lot of times foment things to be saying that they're being persecuted by or whatever else that aren't actually happening. To then turn it around. But yeah, that does happen. So Yeah, when we look at it kind of culturally and historically, that's why. But then too, when we gather data of the American public, and we have a couple visuals that can help highlight this. When we ask Americans, questions about Christian nationalism, and we create this scale. One is a paper by Josh Davis, a researcher on Christian nationalism, and he looks at basically punitive attitudes. So capital punishment, whether we should have stricter punishment for federal crimes, a belief that we should track down and crack down on troublemakers. We see that as folks embrace Christian nationalism, so they move across from left to right, they're more likely to embrace all those different things. And again, approval of capital punishment is that blue line. It increases. Controlling for everything else, like controlling for how much they attend church, if they identify as evangelical, if they're politically conservative, if they're, men, if they're highly educated, or, controlling for all that stuff. We still see that as they embrace Christian nationalism, much more likely to embrace those views. Another one that I had sent, this is from Sam. Well, this one that Tim put up has an interesting story, because you can see on the left, right, this is looking at Americans who responded to the GSS, the General Social Survey. It's like the gold standard survey of the U.S. Americans. And you can see on the left, people that favor this idea of a Christian nation, they're more of them favor the death penalty for persons convicted of murder, right? But then if you look clear to the right, the GSS asked them if they consider themselves pro-life, and you can see a really dramatic relationship here. Those that identify as, we need to have a Christian nation, 70% say, I consider myself pro-life, right? So pro-life and that identity marker contains this support for the death penalty, right? If people are convicted of murder. Now, the middle two questions, should we help poor Americans? Should we provide health care for people that are struggling to pay their bills? Those that consider themselves Christian nation respondents, less likely to support those. So when we're talking about pro-life identity, it is pro-death penalty. It is not about helping the poor or giving health care. Another figure that I sent to you, Tim, looks at the abortion question. We all know, too, that pro-life identity means more support, more opposition to abortion in any situation, whether the woman's health is in serious danger, serious chance of defect for the baby, any of that. They're going to be more likely to say, no, like, we don't want that. So again, when we're talking about the death penalty and Christian nationalism, there is greater support. And part of it, too, is due to this kind of cultural package that has been shaped around the pro-life movement, and this idea of this is what it means to be pro-life. And part of that is authority figures enacting, control as needed. And part of that, too, is opposing these other aspects. A final kind of piece of data, just to kind of drive this point home. This is from Phil Gorski and Sam Perry's book, The Flag and the Cross. And you can see one of the lines on this graph, the dark black line with the black filled in circles, asked folks level of agreement with where they would say the biggest problem with the death penalty is we don't use it enough. Right. So how much do they agree? And you can see that as they embrace Christian nationalism, that line is essentially, a right. It's like a 45-degree line, like it's heading straight up towards 100%. So again, folks that embrace Christian nationalism, much more likely to say, we need to use the death penalty more. And this is paired with, again, you can see on this graph, this broader view of enacting, as Phil and Sam write, this kind of authoritarian good guy violence, right? So the only way to enact order in the world is for the good guys to be violent. So the best way to stop a bad guy with guns is for the good guys to have guns. We need to use the death penalty. Authoritarians should use any means necessary to enact law and order. If national security was at risk, we should use torture, right? All of these things are part of, again, this pro-life cultural framework, because it's all about, the only way to be pro-life, they would say, is for the good guys to enact violence when necessary in the public sphere. And so, in my book, American Idolatry, this is why I write about violence as one of the idols of Christian nationalism, because when you have power, You're afraid of it being taken away. And violence is the way that we maintain those boundaries around the us and protect against the them that are coming to take our power. And again, the death penalty, to like bring it back around, is a part of that whole movement. And so I think, you know, the Equal Justice Initiative, they have, I think, the best quote to kind of frame this, where they said the question we need to ask about the death penalty in America is not whether someone deserves to die for a crime. The question is whether we deserve to kill.
Yeah.
Right? So as Christians, we have to think about the social systems, and if just one person who might be innocent or not could go and be put to death, that's one question. But then two, even if they're guilty, do we deserve the right as a society to take their lives? And is that part of being pro-life?
Yeah.
I think those are big questions.
I wonder if part of the connection between, like, the more Christian nationalist you are, the more likely you are to support the death penalty, is that there's this, people believe they're almost playing God. And the closer that you get to being a Christian nation, like how many Theo bros and people online that openly are Christian nationalist would say they speak for God, that they have this direct line to God, that what they're doing is God ordained. And so, like, the next step in believing that you have a God ordained mission to turn America into a Christian nation is to almost play God.
Yep.
And that, you know, and I see a lot of times, like, scripture that they use the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible that says, like, an eye for an eye. And, you know, they cite that God himself was violent back then and killed armies, and that, you know, the ends justify the means, which but I see a lot of disregard for the actual teachings of Jesus, who is very peaceful and anti-violence. And so there's this cognitive dissonance where you claim to be a Christ follower, but yet you're pro-violence in order to, you know, get your way.
Yeah. Well, I think this is why we often say that Christian nationalism is Christian, but it is antichrist, right? Because we can see in Christian history since almost the beginning, a couple hundred years after Christ, you know, Christians getting in bed with empire, Christians using violence and the belief that God has sanctioned and ordained our quest to colonize other peoples or to take other peoples over. So there is a Christian stream here, unfortunately, that is long and old, but it is antichrist in nature, right? It actually flies in the face of what Jesus teaches us. The way I like to sum it up is that Jesus teaches us to bear a cross for our enemies, and Christian nationalism wants to build crosses for theirs. That's the big difference. And quite literally, we see that happening with this story that we're talking about now with Marcellus, of what happened. You know, these are Christian nationalists who are saying, we got to build a cross for this guy. This guy needs to be put to death because of what we think he did, despite there being serious questions and reservations, and in the case of the governor, having the power to actually stop it. You know, I'm not the governor. I don't know what he thinks. I'm not sure what he tells himself in his head, but I don't know how he sleeps at night knowing that he had the power in his hands, right, to stop the execution of someone that has good reason to believe could be innocent, and he chose not to. If there is a judgment, if there is a Christian judgment when we all die, that governor is going to face some. He's going to face some kind of something, I believe, you know, from God, if it all works out how many Christians believe that it works out, right? Which is just interesting. One thing I wanted to pick up on, Andrew, that you said in one of your graphs briefly, that I think is just important to highlight here. I think it was it this one? Yeah. This one was really telling. And honestly, thanks to the work of folks like you and many other people who are academic and are great communicators, I'm learning to have new eyes for things I didn't have eyes for before. And I'm in the middle of I'm almost done with it now. Scott Coley's book, Ministers of Propaganda. He covers the idea of the conservative dilemma. This was a new term for me. And he talks about how in the, you know, really late 70s and 80s in particular, the question Republicans were thinking about were how do we get poor whites to vote against their economic interests, right? Because Republicans were representing the elite class, the corporate class, the billionaire class. They wanted to protect those people, etc., which would affect poor working whites because it would cut their wages or cut their access to unions, for example. And it's interesting seeing how effective this is, because these graphs in the middle here, and for those of you on podcasts, I'm pulling back up the percent agreement with various social issues and Christian nationalism. And you can see here in the middle, the full sample of Americans, 28% want want federal government to do everything they can to improve the standard of living of all poor Americans, but that's down by about 5 percentage points with Christian nationalists. And same thing goes with healthcare as well. 36% of all Americans say that they think it is the responsibility of the government in Washington to see to it that people have help in paying for doctors and hospital bills. Only 25% of Christian nationalists agree with that. Honestly, both of these graphs on both sides are actually lower than well, for the full standard of the full sample is lower than I thought. But this really demonstrates how effective the conservative dilemma has been in being implemented, because most people on welfare are white people. White poverty is a real thing in this country. And we know that Christian nationalism is concentrated in the highest percentages anyway among white folks. And watching them be able, think, oh, yes, this makes sense. I'm going to vote against my own economic interests. That would actually help me and my family, because Republican values or God's values or family values, that's really wild to recognize and to see in this sample.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And that's the part where with Christian nationalism and the culture war generally, it's a way of, I think, political messaging and fomenting, getting people motivated. Right. So if you can say that this nation is basically going to pass away because of these cultural issues that God demands our nation abide by, and you can get people motivated to do that, then it doesn't matter anything else policy-wise that you're going to do, because people don't want their nation to pass away. And so it's this kind of bait and switch almost where, right. So vote for me and I will make sure this nation doesn't pass away, but we're going to maintain a lot of inequality, right? For white and black. A really great book on this too is Dying of Whiteness by Jonathan Metzl. So he's a physician, but he looks at healthcare, gun ownership, investment in schools, and essentially is showing kind of what you're talking about, where, and this is, hundreds of years old in the US, but essentially being able to pit poor whites against poor blacks. I mean, that's how they, stop the Reconstruction after the Civil War. If you can do that and pit those folks against each other, then they won't join forces and ensure that there's more equality in the nation overall. But it's still happening today. And I think the culture war is still a part of that history, where it can keep people voting against their interests kind of economically, healthcare wise, to ensure that, certain folks stay in power, kind of like creating one issue voters, right?
Yeah.
If it's not abortion or whatever, then I don't care. I don't want to listen. Yeah.
Well, this is a great graph, I think, that shows what's happened since, the early 1980s. This is by Pew Research. They're well respected. And it shows that upper income, so the upper percentage of wealthy Americans, their share of the wealth has gone up by almost 20% since 1983. And middle class income has almost been cut in half as far as their share of overall wealth. And lower income has also dropped by 3%. So we've seen, and we have data on this, and this is only up until 2016. It's gone even higher since COVID, since the pandemic. But it's wild to see that since the 1980s, which a certain president came in around that time, we've had a huge explosion. And we were told that, trickle down economics are going to be the way to make all of us, kind of rise. But the data actually shows the opposite. And yet, so many white folks consistently vote against their economic interests and really access to federal programs and government help that would actually do them a solid, right? Livable wages, for example. And we see this all. I mean, April, you and I cover this all the time. It's almost every week we find some Republican lawmaker in some state or federally that, or in the federal government that's like, no free school lunches for children. It's like, why? Every Republican voted against extending the child tax credit, which cut child poverty almost in half during the course of its lifetime. Why? It doesn't make any sense. And yet, here we are, So I just wanted to kind of highlight that point as well, that like there's so many things that when you really think about it and examine what's happening, it seems so inverted. right? We live in a country full of Christians where a good chunk of them think that the biblical or that the Christian ethic is to have higher levels of execution sponsored by the government, lower levels of any kind of government welfare or any kind of responsibility by the government to help offset the medical crisis that we're all experiencing, because that's somehow wrong and not in line with their Christian values. It is very, even though, Andrew, you give a lot of explanations how we got here, and I understand that, it's still hard for me to fully grasp, because I just think about the Sermon on the Mount. I think about Matthew 25, and as someone who was raised on a very strict diet of the Bible, Jesus, 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 it's hard for me to say, I'm doing that, guys. I'm reading the words of Jesus, and I'm trying to compare and contrast your views. And the math isn't mathing. I don't think Jesus would be in favor of killing people, period, let alone ones who had a lot of evidence that would demonstrate they might actually be innocent of the crime they were convicted of doing. So it's so hard for me to wrap my mind around, frankly.
And it's not like this never happens. There have been plenty of people who have been exonerated after they were executed. And that's why, and Andrew, I think you had sent a statistic that said a lot of people would say that are more Christian nationalists would say that they would rather accidentally execute an innocent person than accidentally let off a murderer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So this is a paper Sam and I wrote a little while back, again, using national survey data. And what we find is that when we asked, or when white Americans were asked whether they would prefer an erroneous acquittal, so letting off somebody who shouldn't have been let off, or a wrongful conviction, so we convict somebody who should not have been convicted, who was innocent, white Americans who read the Bible more literally said they would prefer wrongfully convicting folks if they were innocent and found guilty, rather than the possibility of a guilty person going free. So again, white Americans and then those that are biblical literalists, there's kind of this propensity or desire for ensuring no matter what, we convict everybody who might be guilty, even if that includes innocent people, than to be too much letting people off to the fact that somebody who's guilty might be let off. So there's a lot of implications of that, right? So, I just tweeted this out yesterday. And so folks responding like, well, I thought Christianity was about guilty people being let off, right? Like, or that Jesus came to save guilty people, and so that they wouldn't have the scandal of
grace.
Yeah. So there's all this aspect of it, but I think too this ties into this broader conversation of in this country when we're talking about criminal justice, and the criminal justice system. It's been created around these interpretations of Christianity that help basically keep these racial lines in place, right? That there are certain folks that are guilty and there are certain folks that not. And so there's kind of this sacred authoritarianism structured along racial lines that for white people that say, I read the Bible literally, they're going to be all for a criminal justice system, even if it includes some innocent people, because that system historically doesn't come after them and include them and have them be these innocent people that might be thrown in jail or wrongfully convicted or whatever else, right? So if the system works for you, you're going to keep it going. But for those on the margins, those marginalized by this, who are racial minorities, poor people, this isn't going to work the same way for them. And so religion in that sense in the U.S. is always racialized, like it has this racial lens through it.
White supremacy is so deeply embedded within white Christian nationalism. And I'm sure this even ties back to the 13th Amendment, which basically is state-sanctioned slavery with mass incarceration of mostly not white people. That makes sense that they would think this way, because in their head, they're not thinking my people are being let off.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow, really a great read on mass incarceration in the U.S., the for-profit prison industry. Like it is wild. I mean, we live in America, so we're kind of conditioned to think that, it's normal to have like 25% of the world's prison population in one country. Like that's just how it is here. That's just not normal comparatively. Like it doesn't make sense. And also, our system is not based on like restorative justice. It's based on retributive justice, and that shows, that demonstrates, it is demonstrated well within our prison system. The fact that we still execute people, etc. It's all in the name of God. Oh my goodness, it's just so difficult. This might actually be a decent segue to get into what our boy Franklin Graham is advocating for, because it is. One thing I will say, Andrew, is that thanks to books that you've written, and Samuel Perry and many others, Bradley Onishi, Anthea Butler, the typical gamut, I've been given eyes to see things more than I ever have been before. And sometimes in this work, people ask me, I'm sure they ask you, April, do I stay in this white evangelical church I'm a part of? Do I leave? Is it salvageable? And I gotta be honest, like the more I go down this path, the more we see the data, the more we see the values that engulf this system. I don't think there's anything super redeemable about it, because you can find Jesus in other faith traditions, of other Christian streams. You can find really solid biblical teaching in other streams of Christian thought. You can find community and churches and people doing life together in other streams of Christianity. There's nothing that is uniquely white evangelical that you need to keep. Because what's uniquely white evangelical is white supremacy. I'm sorry. Like I have to say the quiet part out loud. There is a long tradition of this. There's scholarship on this. This is not hyperbolic rhetoric. This is the stream that a lot of us have come out of. You look at Bob Jones, you look at Jerry Falwell, you look at people before that. You look at the KKK in the 1920s, what they were doing in Indiana.
Which the KKK were all, in order to be a member of the KKK, you had to be a white Protestant.
Right. So I just want to say I want to say the quiet part out loud. If you are listening or watching this and you are a Jesus person and you feel like you either have to renounce Christianity completely or stay MAGA, that's not your only binary. There are tons of other Christian streams in America that have been socially justice minded, that have been loving their neighbor, that have been putting themselves in between the empire and people on death row consistently in the name of Jesus. So just don't think that these are your only two options. But I would say that the more I do this work, the more I read the scholarship, the more I hear the stories, the more we see the outcomes. I mean, just last week we were covering how J.D. Vance and Trump, right, were talking about Haitian immigrants eating pets, and how right-wing media pundits who claim to be Christian were parroting and repeating that talking point, even though it's a blatant lie. There is nothing redeemable or unique that you need to carry over into a different room of the Christian tradition from this white evangelical basement. Because the only thing that's unique about it is how it stands up at odds with typical Christian teachings that have been pretty widespread throughout Christian history. I mean, there were Christians who would say you can't even serve in the military. That's a thing. There were like there's church fathers who were like, you cannot serve in the military and be a Christian. They would be considered woke today. Meg Basham will be writing about them in their Shepherds for Sale book because look, they're opposing the military. I mean, so I'm just letting you know that what you're a part of is so inverted.
Jesus in there.
No, seriously, like it's just, I had to get that off my chest, and I want people to have permission to get beyond the tradition that many of us have come from, because there's just we see the fruit. The fruit is Trump. The fruit is immigrants are poison. The fruit is we need more executions, not less. The fruit is we need more personal responsibility on things like healthcare and wages, not more accountability for corporate theft in these insurance companies who absolutely profit off of people's, illness. No, that's not it. So I just had to say that.
Yeah, do not be gaslit when they tell you to vote biblical values.
Right.
Like Franklin Graham did in his Facebook post last night, where he included his Decision Magazine election issue.
He did. We have a copy of it.
I've got it.
Where is it?
Which
Hold
will
on.
lead us to. Oh, hold on. I got to open it back up again.
Yeah.
I have so many slides up here. Is this the one?
Do you have.
That's not it.
No, get his Facebook post first.
Yeah,
Let's
I
just
have
read
it. Where did I
that.
put it? Where did I put it?
I don't know.
Oh, here
I'm
it is.
not you.
There it is.
Okay.
Look
So
at this, Andrew.
Franklin Graham last night posted on Facebook, "The upcoming election is critical for the future of our nation. I urge Christians to pray, to do their research, and to vote for candidates in all races whose policies most align with biblical values and principles.
Oh,
we
my
have put
goodness.
together a special election guide issue of Decision Magazine to help." So I got my free copy. But if you look at the cover of this Decision Magazine, it is a picture of Kamala is on the left, Donald Trump is on the right. It says America's future in the balance. Underneath Kamala, it says socialism, versus underneath Trump, it says freedom.
It is.
This is a perfect example of Christian nationalism hiding behind biblical values. And if you look at this whole magazine, it's not quite as bad as those pamphlets that I've seen them hand out at church. I saw in 2020, I saw something going around in Christian spaces. It was a little pamphlet. It was a 2020 voter guide. And one of the lines literally on Joe Biden, it said, "kills babies." And under Donald Trump, it said, "lets babies live." So this is not, this is
Fair
this
and
is not
balanced.
an objective.
Fair and balanced.
No, it is not. But that's basically the
Genius.
same thing in here too. If you read they have a side-by-side Republican platform, Democrat platform, and it is over the top, obviously pro-Republican.
Oh,
And
socialism versus freedom. Can I just say, if freedom means I can't get a livable wage in this country and I'm in medical debt up until my eyeballs, give me socialism. I'm just saying, like, what are we actually talking about here? What are we actually talking about?
They
Drives me
also
crazy.
highlight, ironically, I'm surprised they did not pull this, given
I have
the
this.
news of
I have
the
it,
last
April.
week.
I have this.
Okay. In this magazine, they call out two really close governor races that are very important.
Ooh, that didn't age well. That
No,
didn't
it did
age
not
well.
age well. He posted this last night. The news of
What?
Mark Robinson came
Oh.
out last week. It says, quote, "In North Carolina, Republican Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, a fiscal and family values conservative."
Keep in mind, the audience, do not forget that word, family values conservative.
Right. And at the top here, it says, "Across the land, biblical values are up for a vote." They are positioning Mark Robinson as the biblical values candidate. Tim,
Yes.
did you hear the news about Mark Robinson?
Let's take a little detour into Mark
Jeez.
Robinson just for a second, okay? Because this is, I want to be super clear. This pamphlet in this post happened after everything that we're going to talk about. This is not like before. This is after. So they
Well,
could
it
have
went to
changed
print,
pull this.
right? It
They
went
could
to
have
print
changed
too
this.
soon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. First, let me just give you a little demonstration of who Mark Robinson actually is. This is when he first started going viral. Okay, this was the first thing he said.
Yeah.
This is Mark Robinson. Keep in mind, for those of you who can't see, this is being said at a church. This is being said at a church. Here's what he said.
You know, it was a time when we used to meet evil on the battlefield, and guess what we did to it? We killed it. We didn't quibble about it. We didn't argue about it. We didn't fight about it. We killed it. When the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, what did we do? We flew to Japan, and we killed the Japanese Army and Navy. We didn't even quibble about it. I didn't start this fight. You did. You wanted to be left alone. You should have left me alone. We didn't argue and capitulate and talk about, well, maybe we shouldn't fight the Nazis that hard. No, they're bad. Kill them. Some liberal somewhere is going to say that sounds awful. Too bad.
This is a church, and they're applauding violence.
A church.
Get mad at me if you want to. Some folks need killing. It's time for somebody to say it. It's not a matter of vengeance. It's not a matter of being mean or spiteful. It's a matter of necessity. We have wicked people doing wicked things, torturing and murdering and raping. It's time to call out those guys in green and go have them handle with those boys in blue and have them go handle it.
There you go.
Oh my gosh.
So,
Ladies and gentlemen, please
get rid of that. So yeah, so that's why he initially went viral. Now keep in mind that he called out Nazis. He called out Nazis in that rant. You know. Now here's the thing.
Which is fair.
Oh, it's
fair to call out.
It's fair, but I must say,
yes.
saying all that in a church with a cross behind you, again, the cross signifies the empire murdering people. It's like the irony is not lost on me, right?
And he's using those examples as a way to justify violence today. And I'm curious who he's saying we should be murdering today.
Right. So CNN did a deep dive on Mark Robinson and his history. And they discovered some disturbing things. Now, I want to be clear, this is alleged, and Mark Robinson is denying these allegations, okay?
But if you read the way CNN found this, it's very hard to argue that this is him.
Yes. I mean, they essentially found the username he uses on all of his platforms and traced it back to all kinds of adult websites, we can say, and adult forums where he was saying outlandish things. And they found like the same email address being used. Like it's very clear, but he still denies it. And there's been nothing proven in a court of law. We should just be clear about that.
Yes.
But I'll just read this excerpt. Last week, the broadcaster reported that Robinson, that's the governor, who wants those family values and that Franklin Graham says is fighting for family values, left comments on a porn site called Nude Africa, calling himself, quote, a black Nazi, praising Hitler, admitting to peeping on women as a teen, and describing his arousal from transgender pornography despite publicly attacking trans people during his campaign. That's the person that Franklin Graham in his pamphlet says is fighting for those family biblical Christian values that you should be voting for him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's a thing.
Yeah, I do not recommend scrolling Twitter and finding other screenshots that he posted on this forum that basically detail some of his adult escapades.
Yeah.
That are very graphic in detail. And honestly, everything I have learned about Mark Robinson has been against my will, and I would like to know less about him.
Yeah. But don't worry, according to Franklin Graham, in North Carolina, Republican Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, a fiscal and family values conservative, is facing liberal Democrat Attorney General Josh Stein in a race Politico is calling the most important gubernatorial contest of 2024. So vote accordingly.
Wow.
Yeah. But this is a pattern, though, right? I mean, we've seen over and over again things like this happening. The person from Moms for Liberty, right, engaging in sexual escapades that evangelicals would not call family values or biblical. Not a huge deal. I mean, even people like Steve Lawson, this is John MacArthur's guy, right? And we're going to cover this more in detail. Turns out he's 73. He hid a 5-year relationship with a woman in her 20s, and it just kind of came out. And the response by people is like, well, we pray for his repentance. We pray for the family. It's really a travesty. It's such a different tone than when, I don't know, they go after folks who are queer or who are liberal. I mean,
or look at how they're even
Kamala Harris, right?
Yeah, Kamala Harris, how they're paying.
Yeah.
She slept her way to the top.
Right.
Despite, that's not what happened, but
right.
They're using that to demonize her.
Kamala Harris is, a loose woman, but Steve Lawson, just pray for his repentance. Pray for the family. Pray for everyone involved. But Kamala Harris, I mean, what did that Fox Business person say on air? Yeah. He literally said that like she was doing the Hak Tua. And I'm like, oh, this is what a pundit said about her. But Steve Lawson, a man who's 73, sleeping with a 20-year-old and hiding it for 5 years while in a position of leadership, attacking queer people and talking about the importance of family values. We just got to pray for him, guys. We just got to pray for his repentance. I mean, it's unbelievable to me. It's unbelievable that we're here.
Yeah. They at least did remove him. He's no longer pastor.
Oh, thank God. Yeah,
They did
do you know
that.
why? According to the Roy's report, because the father of the woman that was involved in this threatened Lawson to go public. That's the only reason why he went to the elders, which isn't even repentance.
Yeah, that's getting caught.
Yes. Yeah, the double standard's so blatant. And somehow we're supposed to believe, guys, that they are standing on truth and principle and biblical values and integrity, and that everyone else is just some woke Marxist socialist, left-wing maniacs who wanna trans children in school. Like it is, I don't know. I mean, Andrew, I know you got to go in 4 minutes, but maybe final thoughts from you here. Yeah, but have you seen any research or maybe just personal thoughts on like I don't have the right words, but like the reality twisting bubble that the Christian nationalist ethos tends to operate in, and how they convince themselves that somehow like they're standing on truth? I mean, just one example. Let's go back to Meg Basham's book. She's a Daily Wire correspondent. She wrote a book called Shepherds for Sale. And the thesis of the book is that there are evangelical leaders in America who are being bought and paid for by like left-wing activist money, George Soros money. But the latest polling shows that 83% of white evangelicals are going to vote for Trump this election.
Right. Which is higher than the percentage in 2020.
Right. Now, I'm just not sure what Meg sees that I don't see. I don't know what convinced her to write a book on the left-wing influence in white evangelicalism, considering 83% of those voting white evangelicals are going to vote for Trump. But for some reason for her, that's all she cares about. She wants to expose the woke in the SBC, Southern Baptist Convention, which just voted out Rick Warren's church, not for sexual assault, not because Rick had a moral failing, because they ordained women as pastors. But for Meg, there's a liberal drift in the SBC.
Didn't the SBC also just vote that IVF is immoral?
Yeah, like they voted on like a statement of like
a resolution.
Yeah, resolution.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So Andrew, I mean, do you have any insight you can offer to us to help us make sense of how? I just don't get it. Like, I don't know what they're seeing that I'm not seeing, and that drives me crazy.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's a lot of it too does come down to power, right, and privilege. And so when we're motivated to maintain our grasps and hold on the levers of power, we're willing to do a lot. And so that's obviously moving the goalposts on what we will or won't allow. The SBC congregations that have pastors that, did whatever they did, those won't obviously be voted out, or if they covered up abusing children, that they won't be voted out. But like you said, if they allow women to lead or ordain, then so depending on how they want to interpret. And I think a lot of it comes down to the Bible verses or scripture that they want to use to maintain the type of control and power that is needed to be contained and maintained. They'll be able to do, because the Bible is very flexible. Like anybody can pull a verse. Like the most progressive evangelical can proof text, just like the most conservative evangelical, and they're both taking the Bible very seriously. And so, I think it just comes down to looking at the systems and leaders in place and what those systems are doing and functioning as, and keeping folks in power. And so I think that's where a lot of the disconnect comes, right? Where worrying about racial minorities, that's just politics, but saving souls and voting against abortion, that's the gospel, that's moral standing, right? And so that's what we heard growing up. And so there's, a lot of us that really internalized that call to love all our neighbors. And then we kind of saw, well, why doesn't that include the people that look different than me, or are coming from Haiti, or are on death row, or whatever? And so I think that's what, kind of has encouraged us to chart our, different journeys and to find folks that are on similar journeys, whether it's in, out, to me, I'm not too worried about all that, but where we can, find folks that are trying to find ways to exist in this world and and move towards a common flourishing and a common good, right? Because there's enough for all of us. So what can we do, and how can we be a part of that? I think those are the things that, once we see that these things aren't connecting and it's frustrating, then we move towards finding folks that want to, and encourage the common good. So,
Andrew,
yes,
you have to go right now.
I will in a little bit, but I can do this for sure.
Okay, Tim.
Yeah.
Can we watch that song? Maybe this is how we bring people together. Just a life-changing song.
You give me a bunch of these. Which one am I gonna watch?
Hold on. Well, I love her little intros to them.
By the way, friends, if you're watching on YouTube, this might get us demonetized, so any super chats help, because this might be copyrighted. I'm not sure. We're gonna find out.
I always bring in the things that'll get us demonetized.
You really do. Is this the one?
This is one of them. You can just play her little intro, and then I don't know.
Do you want to tee this up for like the podcast audience? They can't see anything.
Sure. Okay. So there is a woman I found this on TikTok, but I guess she's a musician, a country artist. She released a song called "Seeing Red," which is very Christian nationalist, as you can probably hear from the lyrics. But she's wearing a "Make America Great Again" hat in this video, and that's it. She is using this song to try to get Christians to vote for Trump.
Here we go.
Bless your woke hearts. Trump ain't Jesus. But if the devil had a wife, it sure as heck would be Kamalik.
The land of the free, taking a knee in the mark of the beast. Where's Jesus?
No.
Took him out of the school, started twisting the rules.
Stop.
As long as I'm breathing, I'll praise his name and all that I say. Put the devil back in his place. I'm seeing red. From the hills to the woods to the hood, I'm seeing red. Taking back what they took. There's no compromising, there's no backing down till the nation's got no woke left. I'm seeing red.
No woke left.
I'm in pain.
Stop.
I'm literally in pain.
Hold on. Go to the one.
There's no way that she sings that. There's no way.
April,
How-
why do you send us this shit? Why?
Open the one that says, hold on. What does it say? There's another one of her in a different outfit in front of a different church where she's like, I'm walking away from the blue party.
This one, it's this one, I think, right?
Oh, this is the
play
one
it.
that we're gonna have Tim do someday.
Yeah, hold on, play it.
Oh, okay.
This
hear the
industry
beginning.
always tells you, don't bring up politics and faith. So I brought up both.
Okay, you can stop it. She's singing the same part.
Oh.
So that's the
That's
same
not-
song.
That's the same song. She's got so many versions of this where she opens with this little like on the text
Oh,
on
this
the
one.
video it said she's doing
Yeah.
what God tells her to do. So
This the one?
apparently God told her. This is the one.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
gosh.
So the text on the video says Jesus is king, and I want to move closer to the peoples whose hearts look more like his, like Jesus. And then listen to what she says.
Well,
here.
and also it's a white fist and then an American flag and a heart after that emoji. So
Which is very fitting. This woman's white, if you couldn't tell.
I don't know about you, but I'm walking away from the blue party and closer to Jesus.
All right, then we go into the same song.
Stop. No.
She's
I can't
so
do it.
serious.
I can't
She's-
do it.
oh.
I'm in
I
pain.
think it's
like I
cringy.
literally am hurting inside.
It's probably cringy because April, that would have been your future if you didn't like change your mind.
No, I know. I can't judge because I have written my own Christian nationalist song that I
I've been
sang
there.
on the Jim Baker show, you know?
Yeah, but
Also encouraging people to vote red because Jesus. Also,
Yeah.
the lines in her song, she throws in the mark of the beast randomly, but she's like taking back what they took. Who is they and what did they take? This woman has every right in the world and privilege. She's singing a song publicly, not being persecuted for this song. The people in her comments are like, this is amazing. You're doing the Lord's work. This is God. Like, yes, we need more biblical songs. I'm like, you're singing about walking away from the Blue Party, which
Yeah.
I don't know if she was ever in the Blue Party, but whatever,
Right.
towards Jesus. But then you're singing about, you're wearing Make America Great Again hat. You're going towards quote unquote Jesus by supporting a man who is a convicted felon. We've been talking about this whole time how they're about law and order, yet they're literally voting for the one who has a criminal record now. And he slept with how many women? He paid off a porn star. He's been found liable and sued for defamation for sexually assaulting E. Jean Carroll. And that's just the one that sued him, and there's probably more. And yet this is supposedly the frickin' party of family values and biblical values? Miss me with that.
I have been thinking for a long time, what is it that gets me so angry about this kind of stuff? Like, what is it actually? And what I think it is that it's not built on any kind of truth or even like data. Right? Because, and I think I get so frustrated because that world taught me for so long how important truth was. And then it turns out that they're the ones who have given up on those categories, but they claim to have them. And it, like, even the mark of the beast, it's just bad theology. Like, it's not even good theology that gets them to that perspective of what the mark of the beast actually is. Like, even conservative scholar would tell you that's not really what's going on there in Revelation. Like, it's really a misappropriation of that text. And I think that's what grinds my gears the most. Is because I, like you, April, like you, Andrew, probably took those teachings seriously. Like, yes, I want to be on the side of truth. People always accuse people on the left of being moral relativists, but they're the ones shifting the goalposts all the time. Somehow it's law and order, but not for Trump. Somehow it's biblical marriage, except if you're on their team, then it doesn't really matter. And it's just very frustrating watching them move the goalposts so often and then try and gaslight us into thinking that somehow they're standing on some firm foundation that is the Bible and God and the Christian faith, and people like us are apostate because we think that queer people are inherently sinful. What? It's just so backwards. I think that's why I get so enraged, because I'm tired of being told by these people that somehow I'm far from God and they're close to God. Because I'll tell you, if they're actually right, if they are the ones more accurately reflecting what God is like, then I want nothing to do with that God. I want nothing to do with whatever that God is about, because it doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. That God doesn't love all of creation. That God doesn't like all people. That God likes when some people power over others. That God likes when people use lies to manipulate others, or when they execute people with good evidence to believe that they shouldn't be executed. That's not a good God. So if they're right, I want to be wrong. I would rather live like this and be wrong than live like them and be right. Because what a horrible hell on earth scenario we find ourselves in.
There's actually no love. Like, I don't feel any love coming from them. And it's ironic because when I was very conservative and Christian nationalist, I believed Christians were persecuted in this country. And when I finally went to public school, I kind of made it my goal to be persecuted. Like, they almost want to be persecuted because you're told you're going to be persecuted for your beliefs in God. So I was so outspoken for my faith. I was never persecuted my entire time as a conservative Christian. I believed that I was being persecuted while also not being persecuted. And ironically, the most, I wouldn't call it persecution either, but the most pushback and hate that I have received has been from conservative Christians once I stopped being their version of Christian. Like, if you look, Mark Driscoll, he has a book out called Vote Like Jesus, which, shocking, it's probably similar to Franklin Graham's Decision magazine.
Yeah.
And this past week, he made a video about me and my spouse and basically called us demonic because my spouse is non-binary and we're still married. And the comments are just full of people calling us demons. Like, we are human beings literally being demonized from people who do not know us. Like, I have never felt more hate than from people who are within my own faith.
Yep.
Where is the love of Christ in that?
Yeah.
Not to mention, Allie Beth Stuckey's got a book coming out in a couple weeks called Toxic Empathy.
I hate it here.
Yeah, because if there's anything Christians are known for today, it's being too nice.
Yeah,
too
Allie has been too empathetic. Yeah, I mean, Allie, Charlie Kirk, Trump, they're way too nice. We had to stop being so nice to people. Anyway.
You just imagine Allie Beth Stuckey like going to heaven one day and they're like, all right, what did you do for God? She's like, well, I wrote a book to Christians. Like, oh, were you encouraging Christians to welcome the immigrant or feed the homeless or love the widow? She's like, no, I wrote a book telling Christians that they were being too nice.
That's right.
They needed to stop.
Andrew, I know you got to go. Any final thoughts or you're going to jet?
Nope. No, this is always good to see you. April, can't wait for Tuesday. It's going to be exciting. And yeah, see y'all next month.
Awesome.
Which we'll be breathing right down the neck of election.
Yeah.
Right
before
we will. The election.
We will have
we're so close. Register to vote, everyone. If you're not registered to vote, register to vote and make sure you freaking vote this election. I don't want to hear it from you if you don't.
Even if you think you're registered, I would double check because things can happen.
Double
and there are
check.
some states that there's a waiting period before you can vote if you're not registered. So yes, check right away.
So cool.
Awesome. All right, Andrew. Good to see you all.
Later on, buddy.
All right, bye-bye.
Now let's see if this transition works. Oh, I did it. Thank you. My other screen won't work because I don't have the slides on that other scene, but it's all good. So, well, April, I mean, I do want to share just maybe one or two other small things. These aren't like major. We don't have to go into it, but they happened this week and they're worth covering. So we all know about Project 2025, and we all know how Trump has said many times, no, guys, I had nothing to do with this. I don't know who they are. I think it's terrible. Those people are crazy, etc. Well, I got some things to show you after I resize these screens. Boop. That thing looks pretty good. Sure. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to make sure it's even. Boop. There we go.
Double me.
Double
you.
Double
mint gum. It's like a double mint gum commercial.
There we go. Cool. So, now that that's done. So, here's one thing I wanted to show. First off, Trump. Oh, Trumpy boy. He just can't keep his mouth shut. This is what he said at a rally recently. Listen to this.
We spend more money per pupil than any other country by far, and yet we're at the bottom of the list. Out of 40, we're ranked about number 40. And I'm going to close the Department of Education and move education back to the states. And we're going to do it fast. Maybe I'll have you do that. I'll use Lee. Maybe I'll have you. You could do it. That's not too easy. We'll get somebody great. We'll get Lee Zeldin is here with us tonight. I think that's the job for Lee.
Okay, a couple of things here. First off, he makes no sense when he talks. I don't understand what he just said. Besides, we're gonna close the Department of Education. No plan of how, where, nothing, whatever. But closing down the Department of Education is one of the key pieces of Project 2025. They literally say in their 900-page playbook, they want to abolish the Department of Education. Once again, when Trump tells you he knows nothing about Project 2025, he's absolutely, emphatically lying to you. And we know that because look at this. Who's that guy on the left? That is Kevin Roberts. He is president of the Heritage Foundation, which is the key organization that organized Project 2025. And here he is with Trump on a plane. And you're right, guys. Trump, it didn't come up organically. I doubt they even talked about it. They probably talked about golf and sports. Kevin Roberts probably did not bring up Project 2025 or anything about what they're trying to do. Definitely not. It's only coincidence that Trump magically wants to close down the Department of Education. There's no connection at all.
Right. The fact that he even is denying Project 2025 is so weird, considering that his own Agenda 47, despite like a few minor, slight differences, is basically a copy and paste shorter version of Project 2025.
Yeah, 100%.
And the reason why they want to close down the Department of Education is to basically, it'll take funding out of public schools. It'll put it into that basically people can use their tax monies towards any education they want, including religious institutions, which basically just means private Christian schools or homeschooling.
Yep.
Because their whole argument is that public school is indoctrinating children.
Yep.
When in reality, they're just teaching facts, education. Yep. But they don't want their kids learning evolution. They want their kids learning creationism. They don't want their kids learning that queer people exist. They want their kids learning that they're demonic. So basically, when you hear Project 2025 and you see Christians that are arguing for the end of the Department of Education, it's because they want to use their tax money to indoctrinate their children into their very, very narrow view, narrow-minded Christian worldview.
Yep. And
which will further Christian nationalism. If you are brainwashing your children, they're going to grow up to be Christian nationalists. Like that is why though there is such a huge war on education right now and banning books. It's because education is causing their children to quote unquote go woke. But basically what that is, it just means people are learning that the world is so much bigger than their very tiny world. And that is terrifying Christian nationalism because education is a threat to their indoctrination.
Yeah, so a couple of things here. Number one, the war on public education has been a thing since the 60s, 70s, and 80s. R.J. Rushdoony, one of the key pieces behind what's known as Christian theonomy or dominionism, wrote prolifically on this topic for many years, saying that we have to abolish public education. It's not good. So this is not a new thing. Why did Jerry Falwell get politicized? Because of the government mandating integration in public schools, and that's when the private school industry really booms. That's when homeschooling takes off in Christian circles. Homeschooling, by the way, was not originally a Christian thing. It actually was started by a legit Marxist who thought that public education was oppressive to students because of the way it was designed. So he advocated for homeschooling. In the 80s and early 90s, that gets picked up by people who are thinking, well, public education is indoctrinating our children against our Christian values, to maintain segregation. So that's how this starts. To your point, April, you're absolutely right. This idea actually would further harm already marginalized communities because guess what? Most people don't have the privilege of being able to homeschool their children because guess what? The wealth gap is exploding because guess what? Largely, largely because of Republican policies and people voting against things like raising the federal minimum wage, things like trying to gut Obamacare. So this idea of school vouchers or charter schools, and there's data on this, always tends to benefit those at the top and primarily white folks because those underneath the boot don't have the resources or the time or the energy or the level of education needed to do these other things. Public schools serve millions of children. And I gotta say one more thing about this briefly, and then we'll start wrapping up here. I'm not sure if you follow what's going on in the Turning Point USA sphere, but there's been a new push happening called Make America Healthy Again. Now that RFK has sided with Trump, and RFK is being touted as the health expert, which really is code for anti-vaccine, etc. There's an influencer named Alex Clark. She recently rebranded herself as the healthy person. She's young, I think early mid-20s, has no kids, no family, and she was at Capitol Hill with RFK talking about the problem of how children are over-vaccinated. I mean, this is what's being said now to our lawmakers. That's how prevalent this idea is getting. But she also talks a lot about how the public education system is the largest purveyor of fast food and how school lunches are so unhealthy, which, by the way, I agree with. And if Alex Clark knew anything about her own tradition, even from a decade ago, she would know that it was right-wing media and it was people like Glenn Beck who opposed Michelle Obama's Healthy School Initiative. They were the strongest resistors. Do you know why school lunches are so shitty? Because they don't have the funding, because lawmakers cut funding to public education. So what's happening is right-wing politicians and media actually creates the problem that then they start railing about, right? Alex Clark is like, and again, she's like in her mid-20s. I don't think she has any kids. I don't even think that she's married. And she's on her show. Public education is terrible. The school lunch program, we're giving our kids sugar and processed food. I agree with you completely. But do you know who caused that problem? Because the Obama administration tried to tackle that, but they were stonewalled by the people that now you take money from. So it's just so frustrating to watch people be like, sugar is such a problem. And I'm like, yeah, I also watched Food Inc. like 10 years ago and found out that our industries are just essentially taking corn and repackaging it. And of course, there's very little government regulation because, oh, shocker alert, people like Trump and Republicans don't want those places having oversight. So you're actually responsible for the problems that you're creating, and then you use those problems to campaign on them. My gosh, it's wild to me to watch.
Well, and there's already a lack of funding in education. They need more funding.
Totally.
Not less. And
Totally.
like, these are the same people, you know, pro-life, protect the innocent. They want to save the children. And yet they don't want these children to have access to good education. They want to take money out of the people that need that money.
Yes.
It's a very selfish perspective. It's like, we're going to protect our children because we want our children to be educated the way we want them. The rest of the kids, the marginalized kids, the underprivileged kids, the ones that need that money, too bad. My kids matter more.
I completely agree, 100%. So I just had to call that out. Let's get to the tweets of the week.
Woo!
We need like a fun jingle for this, you know. We don't have one.
Tweets of the week.
Okay.
Which,
Great.
You know what? We haven't been picking winners lately.
Oh,
we
we
don't
should do
pick
that.
winners anymore.
No, we can. We could do that.
I mean, they're all bad. So.
Oh, I like this one. Oh, I got picked
I
up.
thought this was fun. This was like such a. You have the dissenter. You have Josh Dawes and Megan Basham reposted it.
I was honored. This is a picture that I took when I was at the Summit to Defend Democracy. This is a picture of me, Jamar Tisby, Diana Butler-Bass, Robbie Jones, Kristen Dumais, Jim Wallace, and the guy behind us, his name is, well, I don't know if his name is public, but he is a producer, essentially. So, so I took the picture. I got permission to post it, and I intentionally put it on Twitter, and I was hoping this would happen, and then people picked it up and are like, oh, the dissenter says, Jamar Tisby teaming up with a completely apostate, gay-affirming ministry. Who would have ever guessed? ? And I'm like, well, wait till you see our interview with Jamar Tisby dropping this Monday because I flew into studio. So
it's nice of them to call you a ministry, though.
I know.
They don't usually admit to that.
Yes, I am ministering. I'm ministering as an apostate. And then Josh Dawes, the same person who talked about how it's okay to lie if it's for your own interests the other day as a Christian, retweeted it, and then Meg Basham retweeted that. So, well,
he quote tweeted an ad and Dumais for Kristen Dumais.
Of course, yeah. So,
wow.
They love me. Thank you. You know, I'm gonna applaud myself for this.
Yeah, thank you for acknowledging Tim's ministry.
Thank you so much.
You know what? Our mission field is them now. Christian Nationalists. Have you thought about that? We have a new mission field.
I have. I told you about my idea.
Did you?
Yes, for you and me to have little like cards like Tim and April, missionaries to the Christian Nationalists. Yes, and then we can like sell them for fundraising.
When you're here in November, we should do a video where we, a joke video, but like where we go door to door witnessing. Did you ever have to go door to door witnessing?
Yeah, I hated it. I got so anxious.
I did too, but I did it all the time. But anyway, we should do that now, but for like our mission now, like we go door to door to try to unconvert people from Christian nationalism.
I'm in.
It'd be fun.
You want to read this one? This is a good one.
Yeah. Pastor Gabe tweets, which I'll get to in a second. The Billy Graham rule is still wise. Do not spend time alone with a member of the opposite sex who is not your spouse or one of your children. I hate how like once a year the Billy Graham rule comes up again and the conservatives are all like, it's wisdom. Yeah. It's the don't ever do. And like I've literally seen, I saw a Christian man one time who went viral for this, but say that the Billy Graham rule also includes men's mothers. So they cannot be alone with their own mother.
Oh my gosh.
Which I quote tweeted this dude. and was just like, the Billy Graham rule is still sexist, which it is. If everyone had this rule, women would never get ahead in any sort of business, corporate world.
Yep.
It would, because who's in power? Who's been in power? Men.
Yep.
That's why it is sexist. Ugh. Anyway, so I quote tweeted that it was sexist. And then he replied, he went back, I don't know where he found some picture of me and Beecher and basically was like, well, her husband thinks he's a woman, so we can't listen to her.
Oh my God.
Ugh, so stupid. But anyway,
yeah.
I just want to say, the Billy Graham rule, I have a story about this.
Oh, tell me. Story time.
I was working for a conservative Christian school at the time in their marketing department. And my boss and I had a meeting across campus. And he was like, oh, you could just ride with me. It was a long walk. So I got in the car with him. And when I get in the car, he goes, I actually have a rule where I'm not supposed to be alone with another woman that's not my wife, but it's just you. So we'll let it slide. And it was so awkward. I wasn't thinking anything of it. And then suddenly I was just very aware that I had a vagina.
Right.
It's so, the whole Billy Graham, it's just so awkward. The way
it's awkward
that we objectify women, we were two humans. And then suddenly I was a sexual being.
Right. Yes. All of a sudden you were a sex object that he had to resist.
Right. And he had to tell me because
right.
he felt,
he had to know. Yeah, of course.
Just by, and also not to mention, it's not only sexist, it's also incredibly homophobic and biphobic. It just completely rules out the existence of queer people at all.
Right. 100%. I mean, another way of thinking about this is just, don't assault women and don't sleep with ones who aren't your wife.
Right.
The end.
It's not
incredibly complicated.
I saw a woman on Twitter who said she was in an elevator and a man refused to get in the elevator with her because of this rule.
Well,
it's also just very demeaning. It's you can't see me as a human being. You have to see me as either a temptation for you or if you can't control yourself with your own mother, my God.
And this tweet is probably in reference to Steve Lawson, most likely. Again, Steve Lawson is this major pastoral figure in the reform world. He, I think, was the chair of or worked for the Master's Seminary, the Sean MacArthur Seminary. And he came out that he was hiding this affair for 5 years with someone who literally is a quarter of his age. And I think that the Billy Graham rule rhetoric has popped up because of that. Which is just, again, so ironic that there's no responsibility for Steve. It's just, the Billy Graham rule would have solved that. No, I don't think it would have.
No, it's also morphed into what I think Billy Graham had initially intended it for was at that time, Jimmy Swaggart had just fallen from grace. And there were several televangelists that were getting caught in affairs. And he, I think, implemented it more not to protect them from, getting it on with a woman, but to protect them from false allegations.
Right.
From women.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, well, there's that. Okay, last tweet. This one. Oh, I picked up this. Wait, I showed this one already.
God.
Did I share this one with you? No. Let's do this one instead. This is better. William Wolf.
That last one was bad too.
They're all bad.
This one made me laugh because I'm like,
I'm dying.
William Wolf.
Who blocked me, by the way? Rude, William. Jesus.
Oh, well, I'm still in good graces, I guess. He used to be in the Trump administration. He is a open Christian nationalist. Christian nationalist.
Yep.
He tweeted, it's a picture of Tim Walz and George Soros's son. And I don't know his name. It's just a picture of them. They're standing maybe 5 feet apart. And honestly, I would have thought nothing of this picture.
I literally would have thought nothing.
Two men standing in a room. William Wolf tweets, this photo is incredibly creepy. Walz standing like a defeated animal, showing fealty to the leader of the pack, George Soros' son, displaying him like a trophy. The empty chair in the middle, dark stuff. For normal people, this image evokes a visceral reaction of disgust.
Friends listening on the podcast, this is the most average
So-
picture ever. It's
weird.
just two men standing with the chair in the middle. Like it's obviously they're at an event. Someone's gonna sit there, and that commentary is so bizarre. Like William,
dark
what?
stuff.
It's like a Rorschach test, right? It's like what do you see? It's like how do you see that? How do you see what you're saying you see?
It's so weird. And the fact that he's like
So weird.
normal people
Yeah,
would be disgusted. Like
I just blown away. Blown away.
maybe redefine normal people. I don't know.
It's
just weird. The way that they try to find, like, they are bending over backwards to find things to hate Tim Walz about.
I hate it. I hate it.
So are we going to vote for our favorite?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so we have one,
William Wolf,
yeah.
yeah.
Meg,
Josh
retweeting me.
Dawes, Meg, yeah.
And we have Billy Graham Rule.
I think the one that I find just the funniest is William Wolf.
I have to go with that. I mean, selfishly, I wanted to be my photo, but I'll go with this one too. Yeah, William Wolf, you win. Weird.
Congrats.
Congrats, buddy.
What a weird
Congrats.
thing to tweet.
Congrats for being weird. Oh, April, great show. So much to talk about. Yeah, this was great. And we'll see what happens. Oh, we are going to be live streaming the presidential, the VP debate for sure.
Oh, yeah.
So make sure that you're tuned in.
Do we do bingo cards? I don't
We
know
have
if
to.
I don't know
JD
if
Vance.
I don't know if I know either of them well enough to come up. I'll have to. If y'all have ideas, put them in the comments. We'll have to brainstorm that.
You're so creative. I have no doubt. But yes, if you made it this far into the show, first off, thank you.
You're still
Second
here.
of all, please subscribe. Third of all, please put in the comments some bingo ideas. And then we'll see you guys on Tuesday night for our debate. Should be a lot of fun.
Ooh, Tuesday is also the day my book comes out.
Yes.
It'll be a fun
Get
celebration.
April's book. Woo!
Woo!
All right, friends, we're out of here. See ya.
Bye.